You're listening to the Jersey Guys Podcast, the show that talks about hard rock, heavy metal, AOR, and West Coast music. In-depth conversation and special guests are always on tap, so settle in and turn it up. Now, here are your hosts, Tom and Mark.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Jersey Guys podcast. In the immortal words of David Lee Roth, heard you missed us. We're back. So it's been about a year and a half now, and I guess I'll just real quickly tell everybody why we were away. I had some personal stuff with my mom, some health issues and stuff, and unfortunately, she passed away back in January of this year. So I spent most of last year kind of dealing with that, and that's the reason we kind of put the podcast on a hiatus. But we are back, and thanks for sticking with me, Tom. Through everything I had to do and deal with.
Nope, that's what friends are for.
Yeah, thank you. So we're back. We're happy to be back. We're glad to be back. And I thought, Tom came up with a really good idea for this first episode back, because it's kind of like dipping our toes back in the water and getting used to it again. And Tom came up with this idea. He said, why don't we talk about some recent CDs, some music news, some concerts we went to, kind of like just a recap of the last year or so. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I thought it was a good way to introduce ourselves back. We don't want to spoil Rich Gower in particular with a great guest right out of the shoot, which will be coming up next week.
Right. Yeah.
And we thought that, we usually talk about over the course of a year different albums that come out. We haven't had the opportunity to do it. So basically over the last roughly a year, we each picked a bunch of things that we liked. We were going to do things we didn't like, but we don't want to step on people's toes. So we're going to keep everything, very
right
upbeat.
Yeah. So, yeah, I took out a small list. One of the things I've done over the last year, even though we haven't been doing the podcast and I've had a lot of outside stuff going on in my life, I did continue to buy albums and CDs and everything like that. So I had to keep up on that. So I've gotten a lot of stuff that I've added to my collection, but I haven't maybe necessarily listened to it. So Tom might be a better person to give you this part. But I did have a small pile here of stuff that I was going to talk about too. But you want to start, Tom? You want to?
I'll start. I could vouch for the fact that Mark has been buying a lot of CDs. May not have been listening to too many of them, but he's in possession of them, and he will catch up. So.
Yep. Yeah.
I'll start it off with a couple of reissues, things that were never on CD before, things that were vinyl only. There's a big scene. Anybody that's into this music right now knows there's a big scene. There's a lot of labels doing that. To some extent, it's filling in the gaps for the lack of a lot of AOR and melodic rock bands putting out records, which I've seen this year. There's a noticeable decrease in that. So I'm going to touch on just a couple of those. The first one is an album by a band called Xeron, which was an American band from 1985. Great classic AOR album. One of the real finest ones of the time, I thought. It was very overdue for a release. I wish I would have thought about it, but Primo Benali thought about it. So kudos to him. And if you like that pure AOR with a little bit of hard rock vibes to it of the US scene, 84, 85, 86, like that sound, which is one of my favorites. I'd highly recommend this if you haven't already got it. It's just a magnificent AOR gem.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And I got two more reissues, and then Mark will do a couple. Okay. A couple of selfless self-promotions. AOR Boulevard, which is a label that Paul Rudlin runs, and there's a couple of bands there that I signed for him, and this one is called the Shadow Page Band, which was from 1983, New Jersey band, brilliant, also AOR, the vintage sound of USA AOR.
Yeah, big
Me and
favorite
Mark
of
had
ours.
talked about this over the years. How it was a shame that nobody ever put this out on CD. It was on vinyl,
Yeah,
and I finally got the idea to do it. I had the idea to do it. I ran it by Paul, and he was on board with it, and we signed them, and it finally got a CD release. And again, if that type of AOR, the vintage mid '80s USA sound is your bag.
yeah. Little Frankie and the Knockouts.
The little Frankie and the Knockouts. There's little hints of Springs, like late '70s Springsteen.
Yeah,
It's got a real New Jersey vibe, but a lot of keys, fantastic songs, and highly recommend. Frankie and the Knockouts is a very good comparison too. The other one from AOR Boulevard is a band called Risque out of Arizona. Something else that I signed for Paul, and kind of that real hair band. I hate the term, but it kind of gets the point across. They had the look, they had the sound, they had everything, but they were signed or not signed. And they were on my radar for a while because they were one of those bands that I put at the top of the list that really, they had the look, they had the songs, they had the whole shebang. And it was that 91-ish type of period, and it never happened for them. And I got in touch with the bass player, Mark Simpson, and the guys were all on board, and Paul signed them, and a great addition if you're into that melodic rock, quote unquote, hair band. This is prime stuff.
yeah. That's some good ones right there for sure.
So
I know I was a big fan of the Shadow Page band, and I was really looking forward to that. So I'm glad that that's finally out on CD.
yeah, well, really, Xeron and Shadow Page, very long overdue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm going to start off with an album, and the first one I'm going to talk about is Arcado, we said. They're a great Swedish band, very epic AOR sounding, and Tom actually turned me on to this band. The new album is called Open Sea. It's their second album, and it's really, really good stuff. It's very like epic AOR. This is a little bit heavier than their debut. But I was telling Tom, this to me, I hear shades of like the UK band 10, their debut. I hear a little bit of Heartland even in some of the songs, especially later on in the album. So this is a good one. So Arcado, Open Sea, check that out.
That's some pretty lofty comparisons. Two bands that I liked a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then another band I'm going to talk about is this band that Tom also turned me on to. It's called, their name is Freeways, and this is their second album too. This one's called Dark Sky Sanctuary. And I guess, how do you explain this band? They're a retro throwback, like 70s hard rock, a little bit of new wave of British heavy metal. But when I was listening to it, it hit me, and I'm like, these guys sound like Blue Oyster Cult. You know?
Yeah, we spoke about this before we went on the air. I didn't come up with that comparison, but I see it in the vocals, the vocal phrasing, the way the guy sings. It's a very innovative band. It's hard to describe them. They definitely have new wave or British heavy metal influences. It's a Canadian band.
Canadian, yeah.
They're not particularly heavy. I mean, I would say it's metal-ish, but really more melodic metal than
more
most of the
hard
Canadian
rock,
hard rock bands that are out there. It's terrific stuff. They have a few. I think this is the second full length.
Is the second full length.
There's a few EPs. There's a couple of downloads. I mean, you have to do some digging around if you want to get everything by them. But I like them a lot. I had told Mark about it because it's real melodic stuff. It's not real overpowering. Definitely. Metal, and I know Mark likes the melodic stuff, so we try to steer him in that direction, and he really was big on it.
Yeah, no, and the great thing about it is it's 8 songs. It's like 33 minutes or something, so it's not like,
that's my type of album. I wish all albums were like that.
Yeah, exactly. You're not dealing with like 15 songs and then like an hour plus, in and out, and it's really good stuff. So yeah, definitely check out Freeways.
A lot of the newer bands are pulling away from the 13, 14, just because you could fit 13 songs on a CD doesn't mean you really need 13
Right.
songs, because very few bands are going to come up with 13 good songs.
Exactly. Right.
And it's I love the 35-minute record. I wish it would come back.
Yeah, really. And you could check this out if you look on bandcamp.com and just type in Freeways, and you'll come up with both their albums are available on there, and you can check them out.
And these guys have been on the road this summer too. I've seen they've been on the West Coast. They haven't hit the East Coast yet. I'd like to see them if they want to. But
Sure.
Yeah, highly recommended from both of us. Yeah.
Okay, cool. You want to?
All right, yeah, I got the brand new Lionheart album, which I'm sure most people that are watching this podcast are at least familiar with the band, if not the release. It's called The Grace of a Dragonfly. It's a Japanese copy, which I would highly recommend if you're a fan of this band, because the bonus track is as good as, if not better than some of the tracks on the album. But since they've been back, this is, I think, their third release since they've got the band back, and possibly four, but I think three. And I think this is the best one. Lee Small is singing again on it. I think it's one of the best vocal performances he's given since he was in Shy. I think when Lee isn't in situations where he's either hired to, or for whatever reason, the thing is sound as much like Glenn Hughes as you can, which he does. Right. I think when he just sings normally, like without the Glenn Hughes thing, he's magnificent. And the songs on this album are, you got Dennis Stratton is still part of it, Steve Mann, Rocky Newton. I mean, it's like a who's who of UK AOR veterans.
Right.
And the songs are just one after the other. It's so good.
Cool.
It's I think one of the best records of the last year.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'll do another one while I'm rolling here. The brand new Black Country Communion. Talk about star-studded lineup. Everybody knows Glenn Hughes and Bonamassa and Sherinian and Bonham. This is their fifth album, long anticipated. It's been talked about for a while, and I love it. I think it's on par with all their other albums. I've heard mixed reviews. Some people agree with me, some people don't, but it's very mid-period Led Zeppelin influenced. There's a lot of the same keyboards sounds that the Zeppelin was using, like on Physical Graffiti. A lot of songs remind me of that Physical Graffiti type of Zeppelin vibe. Wow. And I think it's a brilliant album. Every song on it is killer. I would rate it, if you like it, the first four, which pretty much are all magnificent records too. I would highly recommend the new Black Country Communion.
Nice. That's a good one. Yeah. I picked it up and I actually forgot, like I said, I was buying stuff over the last year, but a lot of things just kind of, when we got this episode idea together, I was like trying to cram and get things together and actually forgot that one.
Just hope there's some tour dates. I mean, it's.
I think I saw something they were going to actually do some shows at some point.
Would be great. Yeah.
So I don't know, US or whatever, but we'll see. So I'm going to pick back up, and this one I was I don't think I've heard anybody really talk about this one, but it's a band by the name of Rydholm Safsund, which is two guys, Anders Rydholm and Lars Safsund. People probably know Lars Safsund from Work of Art, great AOR band. But this is the new album that they just put out. It's called Kaleidoscope, and it just came out in April of this year. And this is like a total like Toto fest. It's got the Toto sound. It's got the guitars in some of the songs have the Lukather feel to them. It's got a lot of horns in there. Really, really good stuff. This is the band's second album. Or no, this is their first album, right? They actually did something.
First album.
Yeah, it's the first album. The two members did something called,
Art of Illusion?
Art of Illusion, yeah, back in 2021, I believe. So this is a new album by the two guys, and it's a little different sounding, I guess, so they kind of just went with a different name for the project. But yeah, really, really good stuff. And there's a ton of players on this album. There's guys like Matt Bissonette plays on a song. Tim Pierce, I think, does a solo on some songs. Robert Saul from Work of Art, the bandmate of Lars Safsund, is on this too. So it's just total classic AOR, Toto, really good stuff. So I would check this out, Kaleidoscope by Rydholm Safsund.
I agree.
Yeah.
Great album. First of all, anything that Tim Pierce is on,
Yeah, right.
it's got to be good.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's really good. It's one of the few albums that I've come across in a while that captures that vintage sound.
That sound, right?
It seems to be very elusive. I know, I think mainly because there aren't really any American bands doing it. And when the European bands attempt it, it's usually very hit or miss.
Yep.
But these guys, they have it they have it down. So if you like that sound, like when Chicago was really good and Toto and that type of real high class vocals, musicianship, production.
Yeah.
Great record.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Chicago with the horns and everything that's on there.
Great stuff.
Good stuff. Yeah. The other album I'm going to talk about here is the brand new Vane album. A little hard to see. The cover's not the greatest as far as artwork goes, but this one's called Disintegrate Together. It was released back in May of this year. And this is I don't know how many albums they have now, but they seem to put them out every, 5-6 years now?
Yeah. I mean, he puts them out regularly enough for that when they come out, they're good. Nothing's ever rushed.
Right. Then there's no throwaway material or anything like that. But this is, I think it is their first new album in 6 years. It's self-released. Davey Vane does it on his own label. It's Jackie Rainbow Records or something like that. But you can get it off his website, davyvane.com. I think they had it in vinyl and CD. I think the vinyl sold out, but the CD is still available. And this is another good album. This band has never really done a bad album as far as
they haven't.
I think Tom and I are concerned, right? So, but yeah, I would definitely check out the new Vane if you haven't already.
It's real good. I wouldn't say it's on par with the debut or Enough Rope, which I think are their two best releases, but
I agree.
It's very worthy. It's maybe middle of the pack of their albums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they did something cool on this. There's a song on this new album, Holding On for Love. And this was a song that was from one of their demo tapes back in the late 80s, if I remember correctly. And it actually fits in. It's not like it sounds like it's out of order or it doesn't stand out. It fits in with the rest of the material on here. So, yeah, really good stuff.
All right. Moving right along. The new Judas Priest album, Invincible Shield. Again, I'm sure most people are familiar with it. Brilliant album by these guys. Wow. I'm not wild about the touring aspect of there being no KK and Tipton in the band. But I got to say, they've cranked 2 albums out, the last one and this one, that the songs are just one better than the other. So I guess the new blood is adding to some of the writing, I know Tipton does play on the album. It's debatable how much. I've heard, not as much as kind of advertised, but be that as it may, I think it's a really strong album for a guy, for guys that are, just decades and decades into the scene.
Yeah. To
put out an album this strong. And again, with this lineup, this is the second album that they've put out that I thought was really super strong.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And the new Babylon AD, I don't know how many people have heard it, didn't know it was out. Another band very similar to Vane that has never put out anything bad. Derek Davis's voice is still phenomenal. This album, I was blown away by the songs. I just couldn't believe how good the songs are. Very similar style to the first 2 albums. The first album is my opinion, is a classic.
Yeah.
And highly recommended. Still him and the main guitar player are writing most of the songs. And if you like Babylon AD, it sounds like Babylon AD. He sounds great. The songs are really well written, super catchy. Highly recommended.
Yeah, nice. Good one. I'm going to go with the brand new FM album, UK band. Of course, everybody knows who they are. I mean, I don't think I have to explain to anybody FM, but their new album is Old Habits Die Hard. And that came out in March of this year, I think it was. But I mean, you know what you're getting with FM. They another band that I don't think really has ever done a bad album. And I think this is probably, I was trying to count because they've got a lot of live albums, compilations, EPs over the years. But I think this is, and I was trying to count, I think maybe the 17th studio album.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I would think
proper
somewhere around
studio
there.
or
Yeah.
with, stuff, something like that. But I mean, yeah, Steve Overland, the vocalist on this, the guy never seems to age. His voice is just intact. Sounds like it could be 1986. Yeah, just great stuff, good songs. It's always quality stuff. So yeah, the brand new album from FM, Old Habits Die Hard. I'm sure everybody knows about it that's listening to this, but if you haven't, check it out. And then I'm going to go with the brand new Saxon album, Hell, Fire, and Damnation. Great album. We're going to talk a little bit later in the show about some concerts that we saw over the last maybe 6 to 8 months or so. And I got to see Saxon with Uriah Heep. And this is a return to form in a way because, and you and I have talked about this, Tom, that they've consistently been putting albums out over the years, which I commend, but some of them have gotten a little bit off track, a little off course. The songs aren't really there, but this one, some great songs on here. I kind of hearken it back to a little bit of the Sacrifice album that came out a little while ago. And that just had great songs, great riffs. And the other cool thing is they actually have a new member on this album, Brian Tatler from Diamond Head came into the band. So, I mean, you got great songwriting, great songs. I got to see them. So yeah, it was great album. Check out the new Saxon if you haven't.
The introduction of Tatler into Saxon is just monumental in my opinion. That Biff was able to pull that off, and I don't think it's any coincidence that this is the best collection of songs they've put out in years, and that Brian Tatler was part of the writing process. I mean, he was, the genius behind Diamond Head, which arguably were the best band of the whole new wave of British heavy metal movement. And just a couple of comments on the FF album. I think this one in particular, the new one that Mark just spoke about, is probably the best album they've done, in my opinion, since Metropolis, which goes back a ways. Yeah, it's a really strong album, and I've read that they're already writing a new album. So these guys may be on like a writing tag, because the songs were super strong. Probably the strongest that they've done, I think, since the Metropolis album, which goes back, I guess, I don't know, at least 12, 13, 14 years ago.
Well, it's funny because Overland he never seems to stop, right? He's always on something, whether it's, FM material, or he's got I think there's a new Lone Rider coming out now. I think I saw that.
Yeah, and the other project with the guy from Fate's Warning.
Oh, yeah. That are they writing a new one? Are they?
Yeah.
They are?
Yeah, no, I've already seen it advertised.
Okay.
It's not out yet, but definitely.
Okay, yeah, wow. Yeah,
I don't know how much writing he may just be the voice in that band, but that first album that they put out together was real good.
Yeah, he's always on something, though. He just never takes a break, but yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. I got a bunch that I'm going to try to run through a little bit quicker. War Babies. I probably remember the album that they did in around 92, like when the scene really got a little funky and ugly. Yeah. And a lot of these type of bands weren't doing that well. And, as most people know, it was an offshoot of the band TKO. And they put out this collection. It's from The Vault, which is songs that didn't make the first album, some songs that were in the writing for the second album, which they weren't able to get a deal on. And if you like the War Babies album, if you like Brad Sinsel's voice, it's real. I think it's actually these outtakes. They're well produced, but they're basically outtakes. Are actually stronger than the War Babies studio album. So if that was a band or an album that kind of had your attention, I'd highly recommend the War Babies from The Vault. And sticking with that, there was a TKO box set of sorts that was put out. A lot of this stuff had been out before, but the real jewel to this, if you're a fan of the band, was the unreleased album from 79, 80 period, which I thought had some of their best songs. The songs had been released on, they were out on YouTube and all different like bootleg platforms. The band actually put it on vinyl at a very tiny press. I couldn't even find the vinyl as soon as it was sold. So ordinarily I wouldn't need a lot of these albums because I have them, but to get that unreleased album and on CD official was great. So again, if you're into TKO, that sound and everything,
Yeah.
Moving right along, the Bruce Dickinson solo album. I'm sure most people are familiar with the Mandrake Project. Similar to the Judas Priest album, I was blown away by the quality of the songs. A little bit more progressive than, say, like Judas Priest, but very catchy stuff. Bruce's voice sounds great. I would say out of all his solo stuff, maybe Chemical Wedding would be the only one I would put above this. And then all his solo stuff is pretty good, but I absolutely love this. Again, most people, I'm assuming, have either dabbled in it or already have it.
Yeah, I was huge on Accident of Birth and then
Accident Birth
Chemical
was
Wedding.
no, those albums were all good. I think the only one I really never was wild about was the initial first one because he really didn't have his sound.
Yeah,
It was kind of like kind of like a bar band type of sound, I think he just did that half, serious.
I have great memories of that.
You saw
first album. I saw him a couple times on that first,
which is
solo
great.
tour.
I didn't see them.
Okay, yeah. So I think that some of those albums, like the mid period ones after that, was that one. What was the one that got a little
Skunk Works?
Yeah, a little progressive-y, weird. Like I that's the only one I didn't sit well with me. But yeah, his later period stuff, like you said,
and that's what it's kind of like in that more in that. Maybe a little bit more progressive than Chemical Wedding, but very, like when you could write songs that are progressive but have a hook, that's a lot of talent. That's not an easy thing to do. And with all the writing and touring and singing this guy does to have the time and effort to put out a solo album of this quality is really impressive. But he's a really impressive guy.
Yeah.
All right, I'm keeping rolling here with the new End Machine album, The Quantum Phase. Again, a band on Frontiers. Most people would be familiar with the Dokken connection with Lynch and all of that, and Pilson. I have all three of their albums. I think by far this is the best one. I like the first one. The second one, it was a little, I don't know, a little weird.
Well, it's interesting because now they have a new singer on this album, right? Then Robert Mason, right, was on the first two, but now they have the Indian guy,
yes,
right?
The guy from Garish and the Chronicles,
right. So that's different about this album.
Yeah, and it's really good. The songs are terrific. I was blown away. In fact, that one day I was texting Mark. I was telling him I'd been really giving it a couple of good listens. How good this new End Machine is. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it got
No, I honestly, I let
buzz.
it kind of slide under my radar because when I heard Robert Mason wasn't involved anymore, and I'm kind of like, and then he said, Tom tells me, he's like, there's some really good songs.
Really good songs on there.
You got to check it out. And I picked it up recently.
And you read online, like people like write things that just give bad this guy's they miss Robert Mason. The guy does a tremendous job singing. And, the bottom line is this album's better than the two albums that Robert Mason was on. So, for whatever that's worth. So,
right.
All right. I'm going to move on to a new band out of Brazil, I believe, called Goten. Show you
this is one I'm not familiar with at all.
This is a terrific vintage sounding metal album. Very 1986, 85, 87 sounding. Traditional metal. This is, no thrash or anything like that. The traditional sound, they have it down to a T. Terrific singer, great songs. I've spoken with the guys. They sent me some of their EPs that were out of print, and I'm really, really big on this band. And
nice. I got to check that out.
Yeah, Goten.
Midnight Conjuring is the name of the new album.
Yeah, it's real cool stuff. It's real vintage, like 85 type of period metal. Songs are very strong.
Nice.
Next one, another new band. I'm trying to pump the new bands here. USA band.
That's the thing, though. You talk about. I mean, we mentioned a few bands that are like Frontiers or major label things. And that's everybody knows about them. But and we talked about this right before we started the show. We're like, some of the stuff I tried to go for and Tom gone for. It's some of the stuff that maybe isn't. It's under the radar with people. And we hope to turn people on to something that they maybe haven't heard of.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of good metal coming out. Right now, the sparsity in music, I think, is real quality melodic rock and AOR. of quality. There's plenty of it coming out, but I'm talking about stuff that, has that sound.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good metal coming out of all over the world, including the States and Canada. Thank God for that, at least. But there's a real sparse amount of it coming out of the States in the way of AOR and melodic rock.
Yeah.
So moving on, a band called Entranced. This is already their second album. If any of the listeners follow on to the more newer wave of British heavy metal, the singer is James Paul Luna, who started out in White Wizard and then moved on to Holy Grail. He was actually in two big touring bands as a vocalist, and this is his newer project. It's about 2 years old.
I don't even want to try to pronounce the song.
It's
of the album, right?
the first word is in Spanish, Morete y Metal.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of a Latino flavor to a couple of the songs, kind of in the vein of
Tribe of Gypsies.
Tribe of Gypsies,
something.
very good. I that's what I was thinking of. I just couldn't think of it. Yeah, I don't. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a Santana album. It's a very pure vintage metal album in the range of Holy Grail and White Wizard. But there are some Latino members in the band, and it's got a little bit of that flavor, which I think is great. There's even one song where a couple of verses he sings in Spanish, and terrific album, like real strong songs. They do have another release before that, I think, which came out about 2 years ago. Entranced is the name of the band. And continuing on with new bands, Traveler. This is their third album, a Canadian band.
Yeah.
If you like Striker and Cauldron and some of that metal that came out in Canada, kind of in that vein. Great singer, great songs, traditional metal. They cover all the bases to keep it sounding fresh, but what we love, that vintage guitar sound and vocal styles. The singer is terrific in this band.
Yeah.
Another band that I highly recommend, Traveler. And again, this is their third one. So if you want to look into them, there's
a prequel to Madness is the name.
Yes,
one,
I'm
right?
sorry. Would help if I told you that. Prequel to Madness.
Yeah.
And you could check out their other ones too. The one right before it, I think, is great too.
Yeah, you turned me on to them, and I picked up the stuff. So yeah.
I'm going to keep on with the metal. This goes back a little bit, I guess, more like toward the end of last year. The second KK's Priest, which is called Sinner Rides Again. And the reason I'm bringing this one out is I wasn't wild about the first one. I was a little disappointed in it. I didn't think the songs were all that strong. I thought it was kind of overly heavy just for the sake of being heavy. And when the second one came out, I did kind of poo-pooed it at first, and I did give some listens to it. And the second one I think is really good. It's kind of in that Painkiller Priest area,
Yeah.
or like when he was first in Judas Priest, the Ripper. I thought some of the songs are real cutting. It's real heavy. It's real heavy stuff. I mean. I wouldn't say brutal heavy, but it's super intense. But I thought a big uptick in terms of songwriting, so much so that I'm kind of thinking about going to see them in a few weeks in the city. They're touring with the current Accept lineup.
Yes.
And again, if anybody hasn't checked out the second KK's Priest, I personally like it a lot better than the first one, song-wise.
Interesting.
And another new band, Kerrigan. I don't know how many people are familiar with this. It's a German band that sound extremely British. It's called Blood Moon. If you like the early 80s new wave of British heavy metal sound, these guys have it to a T. Singer is fantastic. The songs are great. And again, a new band with a great sound. I would say very similar to the Freeway stuff. It's not real heavy, just heavy enough with terrific songwriting. And Kerrigan, Blood Moon, highly recommended.
Good one. Yeah.
And still continuing on with the new things.
That's good. We need to do that. We need to turn people on to stuff maybe they're not familiar with.
I'm gonna do two in a row here. Okay, a band called Black Lead, BLACK 2 Ks, lead, 2 Ds. This is their second release called Fight Fire with Fire. German band, great guitar sound. This guy has got 80s George Lynch down to a T, so much that if I told you this was George Lynch guesting on this album, he sounds more like George Lynch today than George Lynch does. It's and it's real punchy. It's not reinventing the wheel type of metal, but it's a strong singer, good songs, and like I said, the guitar player is not only a real shredder, but he's got the Lynchisms down to a complete T.
Very cool.
So that's another one. Continuing on, Knights of the Realm. Some people it's a very metalish album, but it has one of the members, the lead guitar player of Eclipse, is a member. He's like one of the founding members of the band. So it does not sound like Eclipse. It sounds more like maybe late 70s Judas Priest. This is their second one. It's called Darker Than Leather. They had one out before this, which was also had a Japanese release. So they have some pretty good backing, this band, and I'm sure the Eclipse connection.
I have that on order, so I haven't gotten it in yet.
Yeah. There's one before it. I think I told you this. Yeah, they're both equally good. Again, real good traditional metal that sounds like the stuff from, if you like the 80s sound, like obviously I do. This is a good addition. Both albums I would highly recommend. And I'm going to start to wrap it up, going more in an AOR direction. This is I'm sure the AOR guys know this. It's called Mod X Secrets. It's a Swedish singer who was in a band in the 80s called Modesty. I would put out a great high-tech AOR album in the later, I think it was about 87-ish, called Modesty. And there was really no follow-up. I haven't followed this gentleman's career other than the fact that I saw people talking about that he was coming out with a new album, and it sounded a lot like the Modesty stuff, which I found hard to believe because that was real vintage 80s high-tech AOR. And, well, he did it, and he put out the album, and it is phenomenal AOR, still with a slant toward the high-tech stuff, but also more mainstream AOR. I'd highly recommend it. I've actually been in contact with him, and he's already working on a second album. I know it's done very well. I think the first pressing in Japan had sold out. So it's got some buzz in the AOR community.
Nice.
And going to wrap it up with a band called Universe 3. This is the singer, the original singer in, help me out. We were talking about them before. Edit.
Yeah, we'll get it.
House of Shakira.
The original singer from House of Shakira.
The original.
Okay. Yes.
Brain freeze. Original singer in House of Shakira is the singer. He was on this. He was on the previous one too. For some reason, this is not getting that much attention, or the previous one, which I think came out about 4 or 5 years ago, didn't either. It's very vintage Swedish hard rock sounding, almost to the point of like Treat, Da Vinci, that whole sound. A lot of keys, great vocals, great songs. If you're familiar with House of Shakira, great vocals. And I would say it's better than 90% of that type of sound stuff that's coming out, because this is legit. They're all veteran musicians, and they have that sound that vintage guys like down to a T. Nice. So Universe 3, it is out in Japan, so they have a deal behind them, and it's available in a Europe press also. And yeah, I'm done babbling about new releases.
No, like I said, I say it again. I mean, I think that's a good thing, because there's even you going through your pile of stuff there. There's a couple things that I'm not familiar with. So as much as we talk all the time and you recommend things to me, it's like I'm being turned on to some new things. After the show, I'm gonna write a couple things.
Well, I can't show my hand all the time. I gotta save little tidbits to surprise you with.
Right. Yeah. So, but no, I hopefully everybody listening, watching, is going to maybe find something new that they weren't totally turned on to or weren't familiar with or never even heard of. So yeah, no, that's good stuff. I'm glad we did something like this. The other thing that I guess over the last year since we've been away, is I've continued and Tom has continued, and we've gone to concerts. They're back again. I mean, we went through the whole pandemic where things were shut down for the longest period, but that's been back a little while now, and there's tons of shows going on and tons of bands out there touring. So yeah, one of the things that we figured we'd talk about too is maybe some shows we saw recently and see if we can turn somebody on to maybe go check out a band that they maybe haven't seen or doesn't know what's going on with this band or that band. But yeah, do you want to start with something you maybe saw recently, and then I'll jump in?
Yeah, I could start with something that we actually both saw recently, but in two different venues. The current lineup of Asia that's
Yes.
touring, and I went to that concert right here in New Jersey, about 20 minutes from where I live, at the Count Basie Theater.
Yes.
And it was fantastic. They have a new singer and bass player who sounds exactly like John Wetton.
Yes.
And
Harry Whitley is the name.
Harry Whitley, exactly.
And yeah, and he does. I mean, he is spot on like John Wetton. So I mean, hey, we lost John Wetton in 2017, but I'm really glad Jeff Downs kind of brought the band back out. And this tour was all about paying tribute to John Wetton, and just reintroducing the music, reintroducing the band to people. I hope it's something that's going to carry on.
I'd love to see them record, because I'm sure this guy has got material to bring. He's super talented. He's got great stage presence. He sounds exactly like Wetton. He uses Wetton's bass guitar, which was willed over to him by Wetton's
family.
widow.
Yeah, that was super cool to see that. You had also, I mean, you have John Mitchell on guitar, who played in John Wetton's solo band, right?
Oh, for a long time.
So, you have that family, kind of the Asia family. It's still there. Virgil Donati is the drummer on this tour.
The great Virgil Donati. I mean, you can't get a better guy to play drums in Asia than him.
Yeah. I mean, it's
a great lineup, you know, like for people that have said, well, it's not the original. The original Asia lineup was a super group that wasn't never put together to last anyway. And that's why it didn't last very long.
Right.
I mean, even by the time, after one album, Greg Lake was already filling in, and, so like for people that say, well, it's not, this, that, and the other thing, it was always Jeff Downs' baby. Everybody looked at it as being Jeff, and all those other guys, you knew who was going to go back to Yes, who was going to go do his solo thing. And, it always had that type of vibe to it, that it wasn't going to last with those four huge names. But it's always been Downs's thing, and I think he's put, he did all the John Payne stuff that, for decades, which was outstanding. And this unit that he's put together, I think is really credible. And when I went to see them, they had a terrific crowd, and really enthusiastic crowd. So I hope these guys stick around. I hope he keeps it on the road occasionally, and I hope they record.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, Jeff Downs is, and actually a friend of mine just saw Jeff Downs last night in Yes. They played here locally at the Garden State Arts Center, or the PNC Arts Center here.
Oh, I didn't know he played in that.
Yeah, with Deep Purple. It was Deep Purple Yes tour, and Jeff Downs has been playing with Yes for a while now.
That's great.
So he saw that last night. But this was a great show, and it was a kind of this whole tour that they did about maybe about 3 weeks here in America. And it was called the Heat of the Moment 2024 tour, but they kind of tied it in with the whole Roger Dean thing, with him doing obviously the artwork, the early artwork, the Sea Serpent on the debut album and everything. He was kind of emceeing the show out in the lobby. They had some Roger Dean prints that you could buy and stuff, and they actually brought some other bands out with them on this tour, and they had Focus, the Dutch band. And then they had Martin Turner, right, from Wishbone Ash, and they had a short little acoustic set early on from Curved Air. Sonia, what's her name, Christensen or something like that. came out and they did about 20 minutes, a little bit.
Thankfully, I missed that though.
But no, I thought Martin Turner was pretty good.
Martin Turner was great.
Yeah, and I even thought Focus was cool.
Focus was very entertaining. My son, I went to the concert with my son. He got quite a rise out of watching them.
Yeah, so Thies von Leer there with his little yodeling and organ and all that stuff.
He's quite the
pulling out the flute.
Yeah.
it was
no, they're really because the guys in his band, the guitar player and bass player were like ridiculously good.
Yeah,
and it was the original drummer.
Yeah.
So it was cool. It was very entertaining. It was a great show.
Yeah, it was a cool show to see. My only complaint of the whole show was that, because you had like 4 bands playing, Asia played like 75 minutes.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have seen them play
100
longer.
minutes. You would have liked to seen 100-minute set from them.
Yeah,
Because there were a couple of songs that you would have liked. I mean, they really did a good set list for 75 minutes.
Yeah.
But, I agree with Mark. It was a very long show, really, where they gave the opening acts a lot of room.
Yeah.
In deference to these guys that, Martin Turner, obviously, and Focus. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to give these guys 20-minute sets, but it shortchanged the Asia set. Maybe by, you'd like to have gotten 2 or 3 more songs, but it was still great. It was, no complaints.
No, definitely. Like I said, hopefully, like you said, they either carry this lineup on, record something, go out and tour again. Love to see that. But yeah, that was a great show. We actually saw them 2 nights in a row. I saw them up in northern New Jersey. Tom was here in central Jersey. And so, yeah, they did like 3 shows in New Jersey alone. So yeah. But another show I actually saw earlier in the year, back in March, first time ever. I've been a fan for the longest time, but Bryan Adams, first time I've ever seen him. And it's funny because if you go back, even though it's been a year and a half now, the very last episode we had Josh from the band The Storm on as a guest. And Tom had mentioned when we had him on, he was talking how he saw The Storm open for Bryan Adams, right?
Yeah, Nassau Coliseum, 1991. I saw The Storm open for Bryan Adams. And unfortunately, Kevin Chalfant had laryngitis and the flu. He sang nonetheless, but it was still great to see them. But he was really under the weather.
Yeah, but yeah, like I said, my first time ever after all these years seeing Bryan Adams. And I'll tell you what, I mean, if anybody's seen him recently and over the years, he does not shortchange anybody or any fans.
He never did.
Did 29 songs, 2 hours and 15 minutes. He played at the hockey arena here in New Jersey, the Prudential Center in Newark. And they actually had the upper area, the upper tier was kind of curtained off, but the whole lower section, the middle section, the floor was pretty well sold out. I mean, he must have had at least, I would say, 12,000 or so at this show. It was a great show. He looks the same. He sounds the same. He's got Keith Scott, his longtime guitar player, still with him. And yeah, just a great show. I mean, no visuals. He had a video screen behind him and just real plain stage setup, nothing special. But I mean, the guy's got so many songs. You don't need anything. I mean, you just listen track after track. You're something that's a hit. And it's great stuff. So
Keith Scott, I always liked a lot.
Yeah,
he's really good. Is he the only guy left from that?
Yeah, I think he's
lineup?
Got a couple younger guys on drums and bass, but yeah, it's. I think Keith came in around the 3rd album or so.
Yeah, he went way back.
Maybe,
yeah, it's the 2nd or 3rd album.
Yeah, so he's been there a while.
He was there for all the real big stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so I mean, it's a great show, and I if he comes back again, I'd love to go see him again. But like I said, I'm glad I got to see him for the first time after all these years. Anything else you saw?
I haven't seen a whole load of shows, but I did see last spring Toto played also in Count Basie Theater. I went to that show with my girlfriend and my son and another friend of ours, and it was really to say it was good was an understatement. It was typical Toto. I mean, I've seen Toto like Mark innumerable times with different lineups, and those of you that are familiar with the new lineup. They've infused some young guys with the retirement of Paish and who else retired? It was the other keyboard player.
Steve Porcaro.
Yeah, Porcaro retired also. Yeah, there were 2 of them. So I thought it was great. I mean, I
don't know if he retired so much as there was a whole thing there with the falling out of everything that happened when we thought Toto was kind of doing their farewell tour there a few years ago, right? And then they ended up coming back with this new lineup. So
Yeah, that's why I hesitate. I don't know whether it was retired. I mean, Pace, I think officially
yeah,
retired. The Steve Porcaro thing, I'm not sure why he
right.
wasn't in it anymore. But um, Lukather and Williams revamped the band somewhat, and they're firing on all eight cylinders.
Yeah.
And they brought back my favorite on the keyboards.
Greg Philganis.
Yeah, Phil Gaines. I loved when Phil Gaines. I always I told that to Mark 100 times because I saw that tour. Did you see that?
I saw him too.
Yeah,
him
when
on,
Phil Gaines was in the band and that album, nothing against Page. I would have liked to seen Phil Gaines and Page together, but when I heard that they brought Phil Gaines back in as a member, I was like, "There's without a doubt, I'm going."
Yeah. No, I know. I didn't go. I think it was a weeknight show from what I remember.
It was.
And,
It was.
I couldn't make it down here. It's a little. I'm more in North Jersey. Tom's Central Jersey. So, but yeah, I would have loved to have seen them, and hopefully they do come back again at some point. Another show I saw back in May of this year, early part of May, and I mentioned it a few minutes ago when I talked about the new Saxon album, but I got to see Saxon and Uriah Heep. They did a co-headlining tour, lasted about maybe they did a good run in America. I would say a good 5 weeks or so here, all around the U.S. There was a co-headlining thing, so it depending on the night you saw them, you might see Saxon go on first and Uriah Heep finish the night, or flip flop and vice versa. But the night I saw them, Saxon went on first. They still played a good 80 minutes or so, a good cross section of the usual hits, stuff from the new album. Uriah Heep, again, the same thing. Seeing, Tatler with Saxon, and that was great to see. I also, Uriah Heep on this particular tour, for whatever reason, Phil Lanzon didn't do the American tour, and they got Adam Wakeman, Rick Wakeman's son, to come in on keyboard. So that was kind of cool to see that. But they're both touring behind new albums, and just a great show. Each band played about an hour and 20 minutes or so. And I actually had a kind of a special thing that night. A friend of mine, an old friend of mine I've known forever, 45 plus years, he does another podcast. And by the way, one of the things that we want to talk about is, now that we're back, we plan on doing some different things. We're going to do the things we've always done, the interviews, the talk about music and albums and bands and stuff. But we want to try and add some new flavor to the podcast too. And right now we're kind of trying to figure out, we're going to try and do like a crossover episode with my friend Lance. Does a podcast out of upstate New York by the name of Metal Mayhem ROC. He does that with the guy that started it, John Verno. And so they do a podcast centered more on the heavy metal sound of music. But yeah, we're going to try and do something where we can come up with like a topic where we can do a little roundtable discussion and do a crossover episode. And this way, maybe we could get some of their fans and vice versa, some of the guys, you guys listening and watching out there. Maybe you can check out the Metal Mayhem ROC podcast out there. It's on YouTube and all the streaming networks, just like we are. But yeah, what I was going to say was the Metal Mayhem ROC podcast actually had Nigel Glockler, the drummer from Saxon, on a couple times. So when they came through and did the Jersey date, my friend Lance was able to get on the list. And he hooked up with the management, and they said, yeah, we'll get you a little private meet and greet with the band prior to the show. So I kind of tagged along, and we ended up hanging out with the band for maybe 15 minutes prior to them going on, and talked to the guys backstage and took a couple pictures and stuff like that. And as we were leaving, Nigel, and I think even Biff said it, he's like, well, he said to the tour manager, show these guys where the bus is, and after the show, tell them to come back and we'll have a couple drinks with them, which we proceeded to do. After the Uriah Heep set and finished up, we went around stage, or ran around back to the backstage area in the parking lot and knocked on the tour bus, and the tour manager came out and he's like, oh, you guys, come on in. And, it was the whole band. All the guys from Saxon were sitting there in the front of the bus, just hanging out. And we proceeded to stay on the bus for about 2 hours and talk with the guys, just hold court with them. Biff was there, and what are you know, asking questions and this and that and talking to music and talking everything. You know, he was serving up the drinks, and it was a great experience to be able to do something like that. I sat next to Brian Tatler the whole night, and we're talking about, you know, Diamond Head and Metallica and this and that, and it was pretty cool. So that was a great experience to see that.
This is what happens with old rock bands on the road. They invite old male guys onto the tour bus.
That's right. That's right.
With 30 years ago, what male guys couldn't get onto the tour bus.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yep. Yep. We didn't have short enough skirts, you know?
Right.
But yeah, so that was a great show. Like I said, the bands are both still touring. They went back to Europe, did some European the metal festivals over the summer. I'm not sure if they'll come back to America at all, but yeah, I mean, I would love to see that again. It was a great show.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed I didn't see Saxon with Tatler because, you know,
Yeah.
Diamond Head were God to me at one point. Still are.
Yeah.
But, and I would have loved when Mark had told me he met Brian Tatler. I was like, geez, I wouldn't have known what to ask. And once I started asking, I would have never stopped.
It was funny. He's like saying, you know, I'm like, did you ever, you know, when Metallica covered your songs and kind of did that thing early on, I'm like, what'd you think of those guys? He's like, I never would have thought they would have been one of the biggest bands in the world. He's like,
Yeah, nobody did.
You know, so it was funny, you know, but yeah, great guy, great band, really gracious to do what they did with me and Lance and to have us on the bus there and hang out. So just a great experience overall. So
that's terrific cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And then another show I actually saw more recently, just last month, Night Ranger. Big fan. Tom and I both love this band, but I've seen them, I guess, about 3 times over the last maybe 8 to 10 years that they've come through New Jersey. They don't seem to play Jersey a lot. So at least in the headlining capacity, you know, they've done on some of the summer tours where they've gotten the amphitheaters out there, but as an opener. But when they come through New Jersey as a headliner, I always try to make it a point to see them. And I did this time. They played the Mayo Performing Arts Center out in Morristown, New Jersey, back on July 14th. And great show. I mean, they played about 95 minutes, 14 songs. I wish they would have done a few more, but I mean, the band's still great. I mean, Jack Blades still sounds great. The band has this very big, like, approach to their, even though it was a theater, it's almost like an arena show with them. They have the ramps, they have the 2 big video screens behind them, a lot of the lights with the lasers and the spotlights going all around. So it's like it's almost like seeing an arena show, you know. And it was great, you know. I think
I read where they had been trying to, like, on a small capacity, redo that whole thing they had. If you remember, like, around the 85 tour, had a very dramatic.
Yes. Yeah.
And like when they had become big in the States, like they had a bunch of albums behind their belt already. They
playing
had, like,
bigger places.
Yeah, they had with a lot of ramps and smoke and
yeah, they had that. And that was great, you know. Everybody knows kind of like Kelly Keagy has his drum kits not the traditional area. It's kind of to the side of the stage, turned on an angle.
Right, he always played to the side of the stage.
Did that, so he still does that. And, you know, the keyboard player, Eric Levy, they have now, who kind of looks like Alan Fitzgerald, right?
Does he have the woolen cap?
Yeah, he's got the cap, he's got the little goatee, and you know, so he kind of has that thing going on. But yeah, you know, it was pretty cool. Great show. I would recommend seeing this band if you get a chance. They come around, they tour pretty regularly, it seems. So yeah, great show.
Yeah, I saw them at BB King's, I think twice. Wow. First time going way back, like in the infancy and when BB King's was doing shows. Did you go see them then?
I didn't see them there, no.
Yeah.
No.
And then they played, I think, a couple of years after that, and they were still really good. I mean, I've always been a huge Brad Gillis and Night Ranger fan.
Yeah, man, everybody still plays great. And Kelly Keagy's voice maybe a little bit slipping a little bit, you know?
I mean, honestly, I'm surprised that Blades and Keagy's voices have held up as long as they did.
Yeah.
Just for the amount of touring and wear and tear. And I mean, obviously he doesn't sing as much as Blades does, but
right.
That band is held together like pretty credibly longer than I thought they would have.
Yeah.
Just in terms that they've been around not only for so long, but they've always been a huge touring band and on the road a lot. And Gillis looks terrific. I know he's a big physical fitness advocate.
If you look at their Facebook page, he's always talking about them when they're the off days. He's in the gym at the hotel or whatever, and always working out and stuff. So he keeps himself in shape, you know.
Yeah, and it was always my favorite Aussie guitar player. People would like want to physically attack me when I said that, but I saw him in person in Honolulu in 1982
Wow.
on vacation with my friends. But by happenstance, we found out that they were playing the Honolulu Dome there, and we got tickets and we went. And I loved him in Ozzy. I wish he would have stayed. Nothing against Jakey Lee, but always been a huge fan. Big fan of his solo album that with Greg Allman guested on a few.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we know you're big on that, on Greg Allman.
Gill Rock Ranch. That was yeah. I've always been a big fan of Night Rangers. So
yeah. Now that was a good one. I'm glad I got to see that. Another show I saw a little on a smaller scale, but a Jersey, I guess Jersey legend, if you want to call it that. But the band Trickster came through back in May, a couple weeks after I saw that Saxon Uriah Heep show. Trickster played at a place called the Debonair Music Hall in Teaneck, New Jersey.
quite a place.
Favorite of yours, right? But back on May 18th, they played, and it was actually they're calling it. I guess it's the self-dubbed the Spirit of '89 tour. They brought out Enough's Enough with them, and Pretty Boy Floyd were on the bill, and Trickster headlined. For people who may or may not know, but Trickster is kind of it's fractured lineup from what it used to be. When the band came back in 2008, they had the original lineup. You know, everybody was there. Over the years, Pete, the singer, and Mark, Gus Scott, the drummer, have kind of went out of the picture, and so they're basically a three-piece band now. Steve kind of took over the reins. Of course, he plays guitar, obviously, but he also does most of the singing nowadays too. And PJ Farley, who's still there, also plays bass and handles vocals on a couple songs too. And they've got Ben Hans, who's a Nashville, I believe, sessions type of guy, and he's been out with Kip Winger and Anthony Corder from Tora Tora he's played with and over the years, but they have him in the band now, so it's basically a three-piece, and they do the full electric show. They also do some shows where they do Trickster acoustic shows where it's just Steve and PJ, but this was a full-on electric show as a three-piece. And I tell you what, Steve, maybe doesn't sound exactly like Pete, vocally, but he's got a great voice. PJ also, he's got a couple solo albums which he sang on himself. So the band was great. I mean, they did like about maybe 70 to 75 minutes. Of course, it was shorter because they had the other bands playing too. Enough's Enough. You got, Donnie V's not with the band anymore. Chip took over lead vocals some years ago. Still good. He's got that vibe. I mean, they obviously have that Beatlesy, sound, and he carries that well. Plays bass and sings, and and Pretty Boy Floyd, I can't say I was ever a big fan of those guys.
Yeah, and I wasn't either. They were all right.
Yeah, they have a couple songs that we remember from the MTV days, but you still have the original singer, Steve Sex Summers is still there. So yeah, it was a good show all around. But it was good to see them, and New Jersey, it was a small club that they played, but they sold it out, and so yeah, it was a good show to see those guys again.
Trickster, I loved the first. I wouldn't say I'm the Trickster nut like Mark is, but I loved the first album. First album was just magnificent.
Well, they do nice. They did it, even though it was a shorter set. They did a good, nice cross section of stuff from every album. The two original albums, and then even they did some covers, and then ended up doing stuff from even the last couple albums too. So that was really cool. The newer comeback albums from the 2000s. So yeah, it was a good show. And they're actually doing a part two. Or a second leg of this Spirit of '89 tour, which is going to start in a couple weeks. And I'm going to see them again. They're playing at one of our favorite places, Dingbats.
Dingbats, yes.
Here in Clifton, New Jersey, up in northern New Jersey.
These are places you'd have to see to believe.
Yes,
The
sure.
debonair, as I call it, the not so debonair, and Dingbats, which also appropriately named.
Yes,
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, but yes, I'll see them again in a couple weeks, and
Would the term dive bar be overly complimentary?
It's exactly what it is. It's the perfect example. It fits exactly. Anything else that you saw?
Yes, I did see Queensryche and Armored Saint, which I guess that would be right before the summer. Probably like around April, May. I remember it was already getting warm out.
Where was that at?
That was at Starland Ballroom, which for me is a home run. It's like 15, 18 minutes from my house here in Jersey.
Sayreville.
It's a big club. It's
Yeah.
like a real big club. I think they could squeeze like, I don't know, like 1,500 people in there.
Oh, at least, yeah.
Yeah, it's a real big club. A lot of big acts come through there of all types.
Yeah.
And I went mainly to see Ahmed Saint. Anytime I could see Ahmed Saint, I love to see Ahmed Saint headline. I mean, I did get to see that headline show they did in New York City that they filmed for a DVD. That was about 5 years ago. That was, I was in heaven for that because they played about, I don't know, 2 hours and 20 minutes. But I've been seeing them, opening for different bands. They've been on a couple of big tours, this Queensryche one being but the show itself was fantastic. Ahmed Saint were, as usual, absolute killer. And Queensryche were doing very early stuff, like the Warning and the EP.
Yes.
Was the whole set list, which was interesting. I mean, obviously, those two of the greatest albums of all time, at least for the 80s. And I mean, the lineup is the lineup. I mean, it's down to 2 original members, which we all know. Todd Latore does a phenomenal job. It was good. I enjoyed it. I mean, I'd love to see it, have seen it with all 5 guys, but we know that that's a pipe dream. So I made the best of it. But I really went for my love for Ahmed Saint. But it was a terrific show, from beginning to end.
Yeah, nice.
And a great crowd, totally packed. I mean,
Yeah.
the place was, you couldn't get through the front door at a certain point.
Wow, nice. But before we go, like I said, we've got some stuff in the pipeline. We've got a guest that we're lining up for later on this week, which will be the following week. We'll get that posted. We don't want to say who it is yet, just in case.
Hell of a guest, I might add.
Yeah. For all you
For our first
AOR
guest,
fans,
we're going to come in hard and heavy.
Yeah, I think we're going to like this one the AOR fans out there. One of the other things before we go, I just wanted to quick, kind of, because this was a recap episode, what we've kind of done since we've been away and now that we're back and everything. But obviously there was some stuff in the news, in the music news. 2 guys that we lost within about 4 months of each other, CJ Snare from Firehouse, and just recently last month, Jack Russell, or was it earlier this month, Jack Russell from Great White. Jack, both guys, CJ was 64 and Jack was 63. I mean, crazy young and just, it's a shame. I mean, I was a fan of both those bands. And, Jack obviously had some issues with his health over the last number of years, but the CJ thing was a total surprise to me.
Total surprise. I mean, I was out shopping on a Sunday and you had texted me.
Yeah.
And I was really stunned by it. I took it really, really bad because I always loved that band.
Yeah.
Absolutely adore Firehouse.
Yeah, me too.
Loved Snare's vocals, followed him as far back as Max Warrior. And as far as I knew, the guy was always, he was a clean living guy, always looked terrific. I didn't know
colon cancer.
Yeah, I didn't know he had a health condition going on. I had no idea. I think they kind of kept it quiet. And when Mark had texted me that, I was like, him of all guys?
Right.
I mean, Jack Russell, you're not overly surprised.
Yeah, if you've seen him over
right.
the last
He's
number
had
of
health
years,
issues
he's
also, but Jack Russell
around.
lived, he lived the rock and roll lifestyle.
Sure. Yep. Yeah.
But the CJ Snare, I took that really bad. I love that band from beginning. Everything they did, their side projects, Levities, and his and I really felt terrible about that.
Yeah, no, that was a real shocker for sure. And I'm sure there's other things, anything else you can think of than the music
this is
world?
running epic proportions now. I guess we should bring down the black curtain on it.
Right, exactly. But anyway, we're glad to be back here, and we hope you guys, we get everybody back that was listening to us before, and we're going to be right back at it, doing the weekly thing like we were. And like I said, guests and talk and try and add some new things into the mix as we go along. But we're glad to be back. So thanks for joining us today.
All right.
See you. We'll see you guys soon with a new episode.